John and Bipasha shared an easy camaraderie as well because they were involved in a relationship at that point. मेरा नाम इजना है, I'm a porn star. ऐश्वर्या राय putting on weight. अभी उनके दिमाग में सिर्फ वो sensuality है. John is a man who's just trying to gratify himself with mindless sexual encounters. Heroine ने expose कितना किया था. यार, how lucky Randeep Huda is that he's kissing Sunny Leone. Hi, I'm Pooja Bhatt and you're watching Bollywood Hungama.com. Keep watching.
My understanding as a viewer primarily of just the entire franchise. In the first part we had Bipasha Basu, the way she just put her while they're going in the jeep and she just puts her leg around John while she's driving, or she puts her leg on the jeep in front of the jeep, or the way John is walking. I would say body language, okay? And similarly in Jism 2, the body language of be it Randeep, Sunny or Arunodaya, I think body language somewhere is, in a way, for me as a viewer, it's a defining factor. Is it a correct assessment? Do you think that can be one of the USPs, that is one of the highlights of
most
Jism, the
certainly,
franchise?
because the thing is that you see, John and Bipasha shared an easy camaraderie as well because they were involved in a relationship at that point. I don't think that any of them would have been less effective if they were working with other people because they're professionals, both of them, both very comfortable with their bodies. And once they were clear about the scenes and what we were doing, there was absolute trust from Bipasha's side as well as John's side. And same here. I mean, with Randeep and me, we spent a lot of time discussing the character before. Once we were on the set, there was no room for any discussion. That, we approached Kabir through poetry, for example. I mean, there was a lot of poetry that I shared with him that I thought that this is the kind of person or the man that Kabir is. And he's an idealist. He's got a kind of a worldview that comes directly from my father, which is a take on whether it is the war industry, whether it's a take on the whole situation of why the world is in the state that it is. And Kabir is one such man who's much bigger than the average cutout cardboard assassin that you see in a Hindi film.
Sure.
You're not seeing what he does as much as what you're seeing in terms of what he feels. You're going into the recesses of his mind. You're going into the head of somebody who was an idealist, who was a patriot, who goes the other way, why he does what he does. It's not just you show somebody exploding 5 cars and you establish that he's a terrorist who wanted the world over. So we've chosen the intimate kind of route into every character. With Is Now, the reason we chose Sunny is because when you have a voiceover at the beginning of the film, as you see in the promo, it says, "Mera naam Isna hai, I'm a porn star." You don't have to establish that background and persona with Sunny.
She is a porn
It
star.
comes with that. If I had somebody who was an established actor, then you would have to create scenes to establish that what she does and how she does it.
Sure.
So this is what I believe that is, where you're casting organically and you're casting true to the film. Songs that we've picked for the film were not, we had again a very tough act to follow with M.M. Cream's Part 1. I think M.M. Cream, according to me, is one of India's most underrated music directors. Of course, he's got his due world over and more, but he should get a million times over.
Definitely.
He's one of my favorite people, a genius. And what a great album he gave me in the first part.
जादू है नशा है मदहोशियाँ.
And we said, can we better that? And you can't better that. But then you try something completely different. So what we said was, let's not try to get an album together that would be better technically or otherwise. Let's just cast each song like you would cast a person.
Sure.
Who plays a part in the film, and that's what we did. This was the situation. Abhi iske liye abhi, let's go and find a song. And we found songs. Rashk song, Adhura, was found before we even had a bound script. Because the movie began with the woman in that kind of state, and that was Isna's inner turmoil. That was what she was like at that point of the movie. So we had that in place much before. So we actually went about it like I guess one would do, where you pick up an OST, an original soundtrack, and you pick songs that might have released, but they are apt for that situation and that film. So I think it's an outdated way that for every film you will record new songs. So you got to kind of break the mold, and the combination of music is what's worked.
Great response to music. Does it make you feel
thrilled? Because that means that when your taste is what you go by, not a market dictate. And when people respond with their hearts to music that you have actually brought out with your heart, what could be more gratifying than that?
Great. Now, Pooja, you yourself have been an actress, okay? And you've been one of the actresses, especially in the 90s, who was, many would say, far ahead of your time, because I think you had no inhibitions about kissing on screen. At that point of time, उतना शायद नहीं था. आपको inhibitions ऐसा नहीं थे. You've done it in quite a few films, in fact.
Well, I didn't kiss as much on screen as I actually, strangely, even though I was never somebody who had a hot body. But I actually wore a lot more swimsuits for photographs than I think most people did in their films.
Okay.
And I was joking with somebody the other day, and I said, when we painted our body or when we wore a swimsuit, we didn't do it for profit in those days.
Right.
It didn't convert to wallpapers and downloads. We did it because it was a fun thing to do. We
Right.
trusted the photographer.
Right.
The magazine had a great concept. It was an annual coming out, and you said, hey, this seems aesthetic, this seems fun, and it seemed natural.
Right.
So we did it. And I guess today when people still ask me, why aren't you back on movies, I'm a rather ordinary looking person. I've fought battles with my weight all my life, but I think I have a spirit that is irrepressible, and it is kind of probably on par with the most stunning body out there in time perhaps, and I think that's what people respond to, and I think eventually that's what makes or breaks somebody in terms of their appeal, is eventually you, not whether I have this hair, or whether it's platinum blonde tomorrow, or whether it's short. I mean, I was appalled with people going on about Aishwarya Rai putting on weight. I mean, you have one of the world's most beautiful women who's just given birth. And even if she had not given birth, and if she decided to put on weight, or if she had put on weight because of whatever reason, how can you sit there and gloat about it? What is the point of discussion there?
No, absolutely. We never carried that because even personally we are on the same page. All right, my question actually would divert ho gaya. My question was that since you yourself have been an actress and you have आपकी जैसे आपने covers की बात करी, आपके कुछ covers काफ़ी controversial भी रहे हैं and there has been a whole history to maybe people in today's time शायद उतना उनको पता नहीं हो, लेकिन it was way ahead of their times.
It was because I guess why I was ahead of my times is because I spoke my mind and I lived my life according to my dictates, and I kind of had my parents I was answerable to, I had my God I was answerable to, and as long as my conscience was clear, I went out and lived my life fully and unashamedly. And I think that is what is bold or not bold. Not whether you are in a swimsuit or not in a swimsuit, whether you take your clothes off or not, whether you curse or you don't. I think it is eventually in every action, in every day and every moment of your life. And I think that eventually people should equate the same thing to Jism, the brand Jism, because Jism is bold in terms of its concept, in terms of its very kind of, core idea. So it really doesn't matter whether you have a love scene that is 1.5 minutes or for 3 minutes, because that is when you don't have a story. When you don't have a story, you got to kind of, pick at all these things. When you have concrete story and a world view, then everything else is just frivolity.
That is absolutely fine, but what happens is, once again, coming down to brass tacks in terms of when people are coming into a theatre. In fact, I had this question to you. I hope I would like you to just have your views on that. See, I think जिस तरीके से आपने पूरा design किया, I think the lighting, the way it is, the way the camera work is, जिस तरीके से आपने top angles भी आपने लिए हैं swimming pool के, I think everything is beautiful. The way it's been presented is beautiful. But do you have this apprehension कि कहीं जो entire this element of the sexuality, the sensuality in the film, कहीं वो कुछ ऐसा तो नहीं होगा कि वो element जो है dilute हो जाएगा, and do you have those apprehensions?
डाइल्यूट हुआ ही नहीं है. अगर मुझे लगता कि सेंसर बोर्ड के कट्स मेरी सेंसुअलिटी को डाइल्यूट करती, मैं जिंदगी में एक्सेप्ट नहीं करती.
नहीं, I'm not talking about the censor board. I'm saying that once people go into the theaters and when they start watching it, तो कहीं ना कहीं जो effort जिस तरीके से आपने लिया है in terms of your camera work, your lighting, your even जो set design है, मतलब वहाँ पर चाहे if a scene is going on, the way the entire set is designed, I think वो भी अपने आप में बहुत खूबसूरत लग रहा है. कहीं ना कहीं ये आपको एक apprehension है. Do you have this in mind कि that once people come out of the theater, तो कहीं ना कहीं सिर्फ क्या वही तो उनके दिमाग में नहीं रहेगा, जो बाकी जो मेहनत है वो कहीं शायद
जी बिल्कुल नहीं. Because I think fortunately or unfortunately for people more than for me, अभी उनके दिमाग में सिर्फ वो sensuality है. अभी उनके दिमाग में सिर्फ सनी लियोन जी है. अभी उनके दिमाग में सिर्फ erotica, sensuality, titillation, whatever word they want to use for it.
But उसमें कोई बुराई तो नहीं है.
उसके beyond वो देख ही नहीं रहे हैं.
उसमें कोई बुराई है, sensuality में
बुराई क्यों है, वरना मैं क्यों बनाती?
जी बिल्कुल.
I don't think there's anything wrong with sensuality, and that's why I make Jism and Jism 2 and now Jism 3 post this. But I believe that people are going to be rather mortified to find out that they are going to actually forget what they are only harping on right now. That is the backbone. That is most certainly what the film is based on. It's a story of the human heart in conflict with itself. It talks about the longing, the anguish that sexual encounters bring you. These are primarily adult feelings. It's not frivolous and kind of, I'm 17, 18, 20 and my hormones are raging and I want to just kind of go out there and do something about that. These are adults who are rather doomed with their interactions. And I think that when my father compares this to a Last Tango in Paris, what he means only is that you don't see Hindi films touching upon the feeling of the solitude that people and human beings feel after a sexual encounter. You end up feeling lonelier when there is a sexual encounter that's not probably backed by feeling. That's why even in Jism Part 1, John is a man who's just trying to gratify himself with mindless sexual encounters, alcohol, whatever comes his way, and then gets into that quagmire. So it is a film that is unashamed in that capacity, but let me tell people कि आप थोड़ा शॉक हो जाएंगे, मगर कहानी तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली है इसमें, तो आपको थोड़ा अपना ब्लिंकर्स उतार के उस पर थोड़ा फोकस करना ही पड़ेगा. You have no choice. I met Ravi Kishan surprisingly yesterday at where my final mix was happening. We met on the stairway where we were both kind of taking a 5-minute break. First time I actually met him properly. And he came up to me and shook my hand and he said that, you know, I love your promos. My daughter loves Mola. She wants me to perform to that song. And he said that, yaar, Sunny Leone was a great casting coup, but your film has already gone beyond that.
क्या बात?
And I think that when a man like him, who is so basic, makes a comment like that, I think that that's a compliment to kind of receive with a certain degree of pride.
जो मैं एक आपसे सवाल पहले करना था, मैं फिर उस पे आऊँगा. Now you're dealing with your actors and you're instructed in a certain manner. कितना आपके लिए आसान था, या फिर उनके feelings को समझ पाना, या उनके inhibitions को कम कर पाना, या फिर उसी से communicate कर पाना, because you've experienced it yourself as well.
जी मेरे लिए आसान था because I've been in front of the camera and I understand that there might be a stumbling block there, but honestly speaking, I think that Randeep especially made my life very easy because he's extremely open about trying a scene 500 ways, whether it's a love scene or a dramatic scene or whatever it might be. And I think कि लोग इस चीज़ पे हमेशा हाप करते हैं कि एक सेंशुअल सीन जो भी होता है या लव सीन होता है, हीरोइन के फीलिंग्स क्या थे, हीरोइन ने कितने बाउंड्री को पुश की है, हीरोइन ने एक्सपोज कितना किया था. Nobody asks the man कि आपने क्या महसूस किया.
आपने ये भी कहा कि we display double standards where men are fully clothed and women dance around them in drenched saris.
We do, but and also nobody asks the men. Like I remember a joke with even my heroes on this film was, yaar, do you mind asking me if I have no problem kissing her? You are assuming that the hero will be okay with it. Right. So we never ask a man, how are you okay? Are you feeling vulnerable right now taking your shirt off? Are you feeling awkward doing a scene where you're lying in bed with somebody only covered with a sheet? So men are generally, because they're not always in that position, feel more vulnerable when they are. So I think that, you know, it's all very well to look at a picture and say, Arey yaar, how lucky Randeep Hooda is that he's kissing Sunny Leone, or the women to say that how lucky Sunny Leone is for kissing Randeep Hooda back. I'm glad that dialogue is started as well. But nobody asks the men or the heroes, how awkward did you feel? And I think that's rather unfair to the men out there, you know, actors and otherwise. Right. So I think that I was very glad that all three of my actors, A, were comfortable with their bodies. There was no issue in that capacity. Though with Sunny, what she learned with this is that sensuality is not only when you're in a position with somebody physically. And also, for example, bearing yourself is not only bearing yourself physically, but a camera is something you need to be emotionally naked in front of, and that is the mainstay of a sincere performance. And I think that when people are watching your first movie, anyway, they're very generous with you. They allow you a lot of kind of, you know, rough edges. But then what you have in your first film, which you will never have the same degree again, is a burning sincerity, which is you can't replicate again. So every time that I felt that she was acting from a position where it became kind of standard, I would push her to make sure that she kind of reached into herself and pushed herself more to respond, because Isna is a character who is also on the edge. There's a lot happening to her. She's not only like this and is a diva and is sensual. She's kind of overawed, she's vulnerable, she's trying to grapple. So there were a lot of shades. I mean, it's a kind of character that actually you need somebody who's got a lot of experience to display to the degree that it could have been pushed to. It's a very complex character, it's not an easy part.